The August 8th general election, and a lot of issues still remain unresolved for the electorate. And in studio for a conversation on the state of the nation, just 8 days to the election, is Kevin Osido from the County Governance Watch. Thank you so much for joining us. And we also have Pastor Mark Echakara, who is a leadership expert. Thank you so much for joining us, Pastor Mark. So like I mentioned, it is just 8 days to the election, and a lot of issues are springing up, especially when it comes to the general political situation in the country. And the most shocking, or the most recent, would be an expose by NASA flag bearer Raila Odinga when he tabled an expose on a government plot to use the military to subvert the August 8th election. Now, following that particular expose, we've seen contradicting statements from officials from the Ministry of Defense. The CS Rachel Omamo says there are no such documents. Well, we've had a section of KDF say the documents are there, the documents are correct, but they've been taken out of context. But Kevin, the kind of tension this has created, politically, is something that is creating a conversation. Where do you think this leaves the country just 8 days to the election?
To be honest with you, this is, I would say, a serious security issue. Because one, you note that KDF is Kenya Defence Forces, and as per our founding statutes, constitutional and security frameworks, KDF only gets involved in certain specific issues. And that the fact that therefore there are issues regarding their involvement in the upcoming elections is a serious concern. And even much more further, it's really worrying that the same institution can own by the spokesperson, and then actually at the point where the buck stops, and that is the CS denying the documents, and then you have this confusion and IEBC issues also coming up insofar as security arrangements and the Deputy President's home being attacked really leaves a lot of security issues which, in my view, will really affect the outcome of the elections regarding the current government, and how Kenyans will be able to interpret this is something that really should worry both the government and also the citizens of this great republic.
Great. And that's a good point that you get into, Pastor Mark, how Kenyans will interpret these issues that are coming out, especially with regard to security. I mean, we've had calls for peaceful election for such a long time. How do you think Kenyans will react to this?
Well, thank you so much, Michelle. As Kevin has rightfully put it, the issues of security are very touchy issues and they're very sensitive, not only in Kenya, but anywhere else in the world. And as he has rightfully put it, when the Kenya Defence Forces are purportedly involved or being prepared to take up roles that we know constitutionally are supposed to be played by the police service, then it raises so many questions, especially considering the fact that the ratio of a police to citizen has increased. That means that our preparedness to handle security issues is supposed to be better now than it was, say, 10 or 15 years ago. And constitutionally, the Kenya Defence Forces, their role is to defend the nation from external aggression. At no point should they be involved, or should the government at any point contemplate preparing them to handle policing issues, because basically anything internally, maintaining law and order, is a policing responsibility and role. And the issues that are going on are raising a lot of suspicion. And in a context such as the one that we are experiencing now, which is very normal, what is happening in Kenya, I must say, is normal. Everywhere else in the world, when there is an election going on, especially where the stakes are high, as they are, all these things do happen. So what is happening in Kenya is not exclusive to Kenya, is not unique to Kenya, so should not be taken out of context and create the impression like it's a battle. It's a battle,
right? But this is, of course, coming from a background of the 2007-2008 post-election violence. And as it is, this election undoubtedly is going to be one of the most interesting elections that Kenya has had. I mean, in 2007, Kenyans voted for about 3 levels of governance, and this time they will be voting for about 6 levels of governance. How would you say, Kevin, the entrance of devolution has changed Kenyan politics, especially with the manner in which the youth who make up the majority of the electorate react to such issues?
Of course, devolution is a blessing to Kenyans if properly harnessed and engaged to be able to respond to the deliberate needs of the people. And this means that services being taken closer to the people and resources being devolved closer to the people so that they're given a much more higher opportunity and chance to be able to make the decisions in the issues that affect them, and also including how resources are going to be put into responding to the concerns that affect people. And this means that, therefore, things to do with food security issues, things to do with education, health, and I saw a nice story that you are running there on HIV/AIDS. And these are things that are of great concern to the citizens of this country. However, you note that, again, I said earlier on that devolution is a blessing, and of course it could be a blessing in disguise, in the sense that you look at how the first regime of governors have been able to engage with the devolved governance, and there is a serious concern because people still have issues regarding how governors and the many county governments have been able to roll out devolution. And so this election provides that opportunity for us Kenyans to be able to look at the kind of leaders that we want to be able to take the front lines in delivering services to us. And this means that as we have 8 days to go, these people have been campaigning. Many of them have been running up and down and telling us the nice and worst things which they will be able to do when they are in power. So our role as the citizens is to go out there and to be able to look at who is saying what and how can they be able to deliver what they are saying. And that therefore presents the question of accountability. How can we be able to put these leaders to account insofar as the usage of our resources and the delivery of services is concerned? Because I think that has been one of the weakest links insofar as devolution in this first generation is concerned. So looking at the county integrated development plans and the budgeting issues, these are platforms, I mean opportunities where the citizens are actually supposed to be able to engage. And if you look at many of the counties, the highest population, as you rightfully said, are actually the young people. But the youth are still not being given that platform to be able to make their voices count in governance. Right. And this is a serious concern because counties, and that is the work I do almost on a daily basis, auditing and looking at what the counties are doing and providing recommendations and policy briefs. Many counties have not been able to even generate the plans for young people, and these county youth action plans are sometimes just picked and thrown. So governors do not think that the youth are actually a major segment of the society. They are only major at this point in time when they are campaigning and they are looking for the votes and the numbers. Right. But once they are in office, we must move to the next level of asking ourselves, what are the opportunities that we have in place to ensure that the youth also engage in governance?
Right, and of course, that remains the focus of this whole election, despite the political shenanigans, making the right changes to devolution, ensuring better service delivery and accountability for our leaders. But Pastor Mark, like we keep saying, much of the youth population aged 35 and below make up 51% of Kenya's electorate. How do you think the youth are going to vote this time? What kind of issues will they be taking into consideration?
Michelle, that's a very, very important question. The youth make up the largest population, or the percentage of our voters, at 51%. There are many issues that are close to the hearts of the youth, most importantly, youth empowerment. And that is not, of course, an exclusive responsibility. It's not the exclusive responsibility of the executive or the national government. Now, with the devolved systems or devolved governments, now we have the responsibility being shared. And so everybody must be prepared to take responsibility at whichever level of government, whether devolved or national government. Of course, the national government should be the one that should be on the forefront as far as providing the blueprint for solving issues that concern the youth are concerned. And many people say that the youth of Kenya is a problem. But I believe that the youth of Kenya is really a blessing, because when you look at nations that are leading economies in the world right now, the turning points in the history of those nations came when they realized that they have a huge youth population whose power and capacity they could harness, and they went ahead and did so. And so it is important that we realize that we have a great dividend as far as our population structure is concerned, and demographic structure is concerned. We have the majority of the youth, and they are better placed, and the Kenyan youth are equipped, they are sharp, they can do, but now, of course, we're being told the youth, we are the leaders of tomorrow. But there's a question you asked earlier on the issue of peace and all that. And when I look at the issue also of devolved government, I remember my brother Kevin talking about it because he's involved in it every single day, engaging with them. I think the county governments as they are right now, the first batch of county governments, I think they really played a transitional role. And most of them in their first term really focused on putting in structures and all that. And so they were not ready to hit the road full throttle, as it were, because there were no structures. They were transiting from the local authorities and trying to put structures in place. Some of them focused on building their headquarters and, just putting structures in place. And so I think as far as the performance of the county government is concerned in discharging their constitutional mandate, I think we are becoming a bit too hard on them. I believe the next, if governors were given a second term, all of them, if they were given a second term, you'd realize that there would be a difference, because at least now there will be no excuses that we didn't have structures, we were still transiting and all this.
Right.
Now there will be no excuses.
So issues of teething problems.
Exactly, those are
and of
teething
course,
problems.
given you've been working with county governments for such a long time, and the bigger question has been as to whether the electorate even understands the different elected leaders within the county government, because for devolution to work, all these leaders need to be able to deliver rightfully on their mandate. But for the electorate to keep them accountable, the electorate also needs to be understanding of the different mandates of these people. The number of candidates this particular election is rather large. I mean, more than 14,000. There's been questions as to whether we'll have more ballot, what is it, the spoilt vote being another voter in this election. But has there been enough civic education for the different elective positions within the county government?
Two things in my view, Michelle. And the first thing is that the County Governments Act 2012 gives the county governments the mandate and the opportunity to be able to provide civic education to the people. And just to pick up a point that Pastor Mark mentioned is, of course, transition, but I want to disagree in the sense that you cannot transition for 4 years or 5 years.
Right.
And especially if you already have existing frameworks that are supposed to guide your execution process and implementation features. And by this, I mean that before devolution started in 2013, we had what was then called the Transition Authority, whose term expired a few months ago. And the role of the Transition Authority was to be able to help county governments to be able to set up and then pick up and run. And as TA was doing its work, counties were also asked to come up with what is called the County Integrated Development Plans. And so CIDPs are actually the blueprints of the counties, and these were generated from what the governors wanted to do, because right now, even as we are in the campaign mode, all these candidates are providing what we call their blueprints and manifestos. And so we will be looking forward to picking the most positive and progressive elements from these manifestos to put them into the CIDPs. And that is a process that is currently ongoing. In fact, CIDPs are under review as we speak right now. And what this therefore means is that as this process is going on, the citizens are supposed to be involved, because your question was on civic education and public participation. And why this is not happening is, again, twofold in my view, because one, the manner in which information and communication is passed to the citizens. And we have attended many of these fora in the counties where budgets are being discussed or plans are being made, and the people are not being given the ample time to interact with the documents.
Right.
They are also not being given information in good time, because even the way in which the process is being run, a county officer shows up with a document of 600 pages and you're expected to interrogate this document in 30 minutes. It really beats the logic behind public participation. And so in my view, I know that there are also so many NGOs and civil society organizations that are involved in civic education, not just for the devolved process, but also for the current, elections. And just to finish on this point, is one of the biggest hitches that we have had as we move into these elections is that, yes, you rightfully said, it's a very complex process. People are expected to go and vote for 6 people, and we have over 18,000 candidates who are going to select, their leaders or our leaders. And how this is going to play is something worth looking at. But the biggest gap has been the lack of a civic education manual, which the Ministry of Devolution and Planning should have actually started engaging with various stakeholders to generate a curriculum or a tool that would then guide this process going on. So yes, IEBC has that document, but it is coming in too late, way too late, when already the politicians have taken up the center stage of the campaigns. And what we are seeing going on is really political propaganda, name-calling, and shameless acts of theatrics, which I don't think makes sense.
And of course, it's just 6 days to the end of the official campaign period. And like you mentioned, on the campaign trail, all we hear is elect leaders based on their performance record or based on their development record. And that has also meant that leaders are going all over the place, launching different or commissioning different development projects. But at what angle does especially the youth and the electorate need to assess the development records of these leaders? Because we have instances where people in a certain region need water in their taps, but here's a leader who's come and built a pool. He's given them water, but not the kind of water they need. So where does the electorate begin in assessing the development record as to how it benefited them and whether this leader will bring more change for the next 5 years, Pastor Mark?
Well, I think right now, most Kenyan electorate will not be able to make very objective assessment of the leaders that are presenting themselves for elective positions, because the majority of them do not really have that opportunity and time to sit back and to look at things objectively, because every single day, left, right, and center, they are being bombarded with a campaign information. You barely sit down to think about what the candidate campaigned yesterday said before another one comes to town, and you're supposed to run to the market and listen to them. As soon as they leave town, another one lands in, so the circus continues. And so I don't think right now, I don't believe that any of the Kenyans would be able to make an objective decision on the performance of the candidates that present themselves. Maybe the only position where they can be able to look at things objectively is at the highest level. Maybe the governor and the presidential. I think that is the only place where things are so obvious. You can be able to assess who has performed and who has not performed. And when it comes to MCA, members of parliament, it's going to be difficult.
Right. But Kevin, even during the party primaries and the party nominations, you saw several counties where the electorate seemingly hounded out a majority of the sitting politicians. Is this, maybe an indication that the electorate has really begun assessing and analyzing these leaders from a different standpoint?
Definitely, in my view. In fact, in Kenya, I'm so excited about the manner in which the populace, so the voters, are now beginning to look at things from more or less, an issue-based perspective, and moving away from this ethnic and tribal-centric manner in which we look at things. And this is very progressive, because you notice that even we also seeing the entrance of the independent candidates who also are really tilting, the nature in which campaigns and elections are run in this country. So this therefore gives the citizens an opportunity to look at, if I have an individual that is unable to deliver through through a political party. What then is my next point to look at? And this point is looking at the independent candidates. And again, this also gives the opportunity to people like Pastor Mark, who might not want to run through a political party, but is a much more progressive and development conscious and oriented leader who has a feeling that, yes, if I have Kevin Osido as my running mate, we can make it as the president of this country. And then we don't have to really get into the boxing and this, the fixation of a political party, because you believe that we will be able to run. And so we have different platforms, we have different opportunities for people to be able to engage. Even members of the private sector, look at people like Polycarp Igathe, who are coming from the private sector into politics. And what therefore this presents, in my view, is the opportunity to the citizens to look at, can there be another way of doing at things? Is there a way in which we can be able to look at individuals and gauge their performance records, and then be able to task them with certain responsibilities and follow them up and ensure that they actually deliver? So much such that for me, as we move on until 2022, we'll begin to look at Kenya's political landscape moving from this ethnic and tribal way of doing things into much more issue-based. And then the citizens will also begin to get much more empowered because we are learning and we are picking up the challenges and using different systems to be able to fill up the gaps, which I'm very sure that will be able to transform the manner in which we do our politics as a country.
Right. Pastor Mark.
Yeah, I think Kevin has really, he has delved into that matter, and he has touched on very important issues. But besides what he said, I just want to say that the Kenyan electorate, as he has rightfully put, is becoming smarter by the day. And they are not as ignorant, despite the fact that there is no civic education that is going on. All the political class are not making any deliberate steps to make sure that the electorate are enlightened so that they continue taking advantage of the ignorance. There's still enlightenment going on. My grandfather once told me, in my dialect, I will interpret.
All right.
He said, "Okirorangi etwanle kunye mune pekare ebang." Now, to interpret that means my namesake, a man who is beaten by the same snake twice, is a fool. And so Kenyans have been beaten many times, and they are becoming smarter by the day. You know, you don't get slapped today when you pass this route and you pass there again tomorrow. And so it's very soon, I believe that our political landscape is going to change drastically and very fast, because the politicians will come and think it's business as usual, just come, pull their monkey tricks in town, and their best tricks out of the bag, and think they're going to work. And they realize these people are just watching them. They smile, they clap, they go. And when they go convinced that they have already put them in the box, they realize these people are smarter. And so things are changing, and they're changing very fast.
Right. And of course, one of the biggest concerns in this election has been avoiding any violence whatsoever. And it's a conversation that many say is premature. You know, we should not be propagating this conversation to begin with. But the truth is that there are fears on the ground. There are Kenyans who have packed their bags and traveled out of the country. There are Kenyans who have stripped supermarkets empty because they are stocking up for these elections. And we're in an age of information. For example, the latest has been just about 17, 18 hours ago, fake news reports circulating in Kenya, showing videos claiming to be from CNN and the BBC, propagating news that the incumbent President Uhuru Kenyatta is leading in the polls. Now, both CNN and BBC have come out to dismiss this, saying they're being targeted by fake news in the country. But these are reports that have the potential of causing a lot of uproar in the country. And it's not just CNN and BBC alone, social media, Facebook, Twitter, a lot of this has been going on, fake news, propagation of hate speech. Kevin, 6 days is a lot. I mean, 8 days to the election. It's a make or break time for whatever circulates on social media to cause uproar. How can we begin cracking down on this as Kenyans, forgetting bodies like the NCIC?
It is expected, Michelle. And this is, in my view, not the first time that BBC, CNN is being used in this manner. In 2007, there was a photo which was doing rounds that BBC declared President Raila Odinga to to have won the elections. So, of course, I'm sure it was dealt with immediately. And now, for 2017 elections, it is expected, as you rightfully said when we began this discussion, that it's one of those profound moments for Kenyans. Because if you look at the people who are running for office, in terms of personalities and also the numbers, it is huge. We are having almost 8+ presidential candidates. We are having almost 400+ people running as governors. We are having over 12,000 MCAs and over 800 women reps. We are having over 600 senators, and these numbers are really, they mean a lot. Everybody wants to make it, despite the fact that we'll only be picking one per county and per seat, regardless of where it is. And so people are beginning to get much more creative, but that creativity has limits. And it has limits because Kenya is a sovereign state. It has limits because Kenya is governed by the rule of law. It has limits because there are institutions that are supposed to do the work which they are supposed to do. Now, fake news and propaganda is also not new in democratic processes and especially in elections. How we deal with it is the most important thing. And my word to the so many Kenyans who are watching this segment right now and those who are going to vote, the over 19 million of us, is be able to look at what is happening and distinguish the truth from falsity, because what will be able to have Kenya stand on the midnight of Nane, the 8th of August, is what you and I will be able to do.
Right.
Whether we stand for the path to make this country great or we stand on the path to destroy this country. Regardless of what, because we can't stop people who are using social media to spread terrible news. We can't stop people who are using social media to also propagate positive messages that will be able to make this country stand. Because in my view and from my perspective, the most important thing is, what will I be able to do to make Kenya stand? That by the fact that we are going to vote on August of 8th is not to destroy this country, but that we can still be able to stand, and the following day walk and go back to work, walk and go to the shop and it is opened and I can buy my food stuff. Walk and be able to go to church and there's a pastor waiting, know that the church is closed. Walk and be able to go to the bank because it is opened, I can do my transactions. Walk out and be able to go to my M-Pesa because there is an agent waiting to serve me. And not that now life stops because we have been able to have our elections.
Right.
So my fellow Kenyans, let's disregard all this rubbish of social media and all these threats, because it is also going to affect the voter turnout. I went to Easy Coach 2 days ago to book a bus for my brother, and Easy Coach is booked until the 8th of August. Where are people going to?
Right.
And where have they been all this while? Where did they register? You know, this is a serious concern, because if IEBC says we are 19 million voters, and even 2 million of them walk out, you know, from their polling stations, then that is a serious concern. And we know that elections, failure to vote is equals to voting the leader that you do not want.
Right.
That person who has not been able to perform, that person who has been propagating hate speech. So what this means, in my view, is security agents must be able to come out and really encourage Kenyans. And IEBC must be out there to be able to speak to Kenyans and build that confidence that Kenya will be able to stand. Because in my view, Michelle and Pastor Mark, that is the most important thing.
Right.
That on 9th of August or even midnight of 8th of August, Kenya will still be able
back
to
to normal. And I'll give you a comment on that, Pastor Mark, but we'd like to take a short commercial break. It is now 30 minutes past the hour. You're watching Weekend Express on KTN News. We take a short commercial break. When we come back, we continue with this conversation as we take a look at what's making headlines on the dailies.
This is KTN News.